There are some absolutely crazy natural wonders in Civ 7, and Isabella makes them all so much better. Not only does she double the yields on the tiles, but she has a starting bias that almost guarantees her a natural wonder in her starting capital. In this video, we explore just how good each of these natural wonders are with Isabella, and rank them by just how satisfied they make her. My name is Drongo, this is Civ 7, and join me as we take one more turn. So our first natural wonder is going to be the Great Barrier Reef, and of course, looking at those tile yields, there is no surprise this is going to score very highly when it comes to the tier list. An incredible natural wonder, giving you 4 tiles, which means you're able to pick up gold for each of them from that memento that you're pretty much going to always be using, so it comes online at level 2. Now, one thing to note is that we'll be grading each natural wonder on 3 different variables or 3 different criteria. The first one is going to be your tempo, so that's how fast does it actually get you out of the gate. That's things like food, production, and gold. Then we're going to be looking at its tech component, so how much culture, how much science, how much happiness is it giving you? And then the third component that we're going to be looking at is based around your investment. How much do you need to invest into tiles? How much do you need to invest into wonders, potentially, to bring these natural wonders online? So when it comes to the Great Barrier Reef, there's really not a lot of investment. It is for citizens, but I think everyone could look at this and say, well, that is definitely a worthwhile investment. So I don't really see this as a huge investment cost. When it comes to tempo, you're picking up huge food and huge gold. The food is great because it allows you to very quickly roll over that food into the next tile, and it allows you to pick it up. One thing to note is it can sometimes spawn a little bit further off the coast, so you might want to try and get a little bit closer to it, just because the sooner you get to it, the sooner the tempo starts ticking. It can be a really powerful snowball beginner. On top of that, you've also got the science that's coming through from this, and this is significant. When it comes to science in the early game, it's difficult to get it. Unless you're a scientific leader where you've got access to that scientific collaboration, it is quite difficult to pick up science. So these are huge yields, and of course, the happiness is going to be pushing you into constant celebrations. The only real downfall that it's got is it doesn't have production. That's pretty much it. There's no other thing that really stops it or holds it back. So for a natural wonder like this, I mean, this is just a picture-perfect natural wonder. But what's funny, though, is it still doesn't hit the S tier. There's natural wonders that are better than this. And you look at this and you think, okay, these yields are absolutely insane. There's no possible way. Look, when it comes to the early game synergies, I think this works well, just simply because when you've got this natural wonder, it allows you to focus on culture. It allows you to say, okay, I'm going to chase down masonry, I'm going to pick up my monument, because I've got science already looked after. I don't have to think about the library. It means that when it comes to putting in your policy slots, you're going to be able to just go, okay, well, I just want my +2 culture in the palace, and that's it, and not have to think about it. So overall, when it comes to the Great Barrier Reef, this bad boy is going to be going in the A tier. It makes Isabella very happy when she spawns next to this, that is for sure. Okay, so moving on to the Grand Canyon. This is probably one of the best teching natural wonders there is in the game. Not only do you have that 2 culture as well as the 4 happiness that it gives you, but every single tile in the settlement that's flat will also get a flat 2 science bonus, which is absolutely huge when you think about it. And I think the biggest difficulty that you're going to have with this natural wonder is deciding when to actually put citizens in to work it versus not put them in. You know, you will have to decide, okay, do I grow or do I go into the natural wonder? That's going to be the biggest challenge that you have with this natural wonder. And if we were to look at those 3 categories that we talk about with the Great Barrier Reef, we're looking at early game tempo. There is no food, no production, and no gold that comes into it. The gold is just the base gold that you've got, but there are 4 tiles, so that's one thing to note. Compared to, say, something like Uluru, where it's a single tile, you do not, or you've got an advantage in that regard. But I guess I stress back to that thing, compared to the Great Barrier Reef, where you want to work all the tiles immediately, here you don't want to work all the tiles immediately. So it's a pretty low score if you had to give one for the tempo. When it comes to the tech, obviously this is one of the best techs you'll get in the game. This is incredible. The 4 culture for Isabella, just doubling up all of the tiles that she's working. On top of that, the 8 happiness, which is just going to be pushing you to constantly have celebrations throughout the game, which is going to compound because you'll have more and more social policies available for you to pick. On top of that, you've got the science, which is just coming through. So as you move towards the mid-game, you're going to notice a huge amount of science and culture, which is just going to be there that you otherwise wouldn't have had, and that is incredible. But the biggest issue here is the tempo. When it comes to the investment, there's not a huge amount of investment that you actually need to make in the natural wonder. You could look at something like Petra to help bring it online even further, but even then, there's no guarantee that you're always going to be around desert tiles with it. I have seen it spawn outside of those desert tiles. So realistically, when it comes to this natural wonder, it's going to go into the B tier, okay? I was kind of tempted to put it towards the A tier because of the strength of the tech bonuses that it gets, but the fact that it's just missing out on those early tempo bonuses, I think really inhibits it. And it's the biggest problem is that you've got to make decisions, right? You don't want to make decisions. You just want to be like, natural wonder, I'm going to click it. And you can't do that with the Grand Canyon. Okay, so moving on to the Valley of Flowers. This is a 2-tile natural wonder that you'll have access to very rarely as Isabella. I found that her spawn bias, for whatever reason, just didn't really like giving you this natural wonder. I did quite a bit of testing, so that I can say that with a pretty high accuracy. When it comes to the yields that are on here, we've got 2 food, 2 culture, and 2 happiness. Of course, we've got that base 2 gold that's going to be coming in from our memento as well. Now, one thing to note that with this natural wonder, it extends out your trade range by 10 from this settlement. And of course, this is our capital. That's what this is all about, you know, putting the landmark in the capital. And that's a decent bonus, right? That is a bonus that you are going to be noticing throughout the game. It's not a super duper meaningful bonus, but it is definitely, you know, it's something that will make a difference in the late game. Now, with regard to this natural wonder and the 3 different categories, the first thing that we're going to be looking at is tempo. Tempo is okay here. So it starts off with a base of 2 going to 4 food for each one of them. You get 2 of them, and there are a total of 8 food. And realistically, that is it. There's no real decision-making process here. As long as you've got them available, you are always going to be taking these first. So that is definitely a plus when it comes to this natural wonder. But the biggest issue that you're going to have is that compared to other wonders, it's just one of those ones where it's like, you know, damn, it could have been something better. It could have been the Great Barrier Reef. And that's sort of what I found myself doing when I was playing this game, where it was like, these yields are lovely to have. I'm not complaining. I've got 16 yields. They're incredible. The culture's coming through. The happiness is coming through. And if we talk about that tech side, you do have that culture as well as that happiness focus, which means you can just focus on the science instead of having to beeline towards going into masonry to get your monuments up. You can just go straight into your library. It makes it much simpler for you, and knowing that you're just going to be able to focus on that, because realistically 8 culture in the early game is a huge amount of culture. But once again, we're also going to just draw back to the fact that it is only going to be those 2 tiles. So you're not getting a huge amount of food coming through from this, or rather a huge amount of gold coming through from this. And because of that, because the yields are quite low, even though it is such a good natural wonder, right? You look at that, but compared to everything else, because of that, it's going to be going in the C tier. Okay, so next up we have got Hoerikwaggo, which is the only time I'm going to be saying that name because it's not a fun one. It is an incredible wonder. This is an incredible natural wonder for you as the Spanish. There are a huge amount of reasons why this is good, but the first one is just simply because the base yields are incredible. 4 food as well as 2 culture. The second component of this is that there's actually 4 tiles, which means you're going to be picking up that plus 2 gold, which turns into plus 4 gold for each of these. The third one is that you don't have to think about this natural wonder. You just click the natural wonder, every single one of them, click them as quickly as you can. It is incredible. So you get these huge tile yields, and it is just absolutely insane the amount of growth that you're going to be getting from this natural wonder. As you can see, 8 food, 4 gold, 4 culture. This is, you know, just that on a single tile would be incredible, but there's 4 of them all together, so it is incredible. On top of that, we haven't even really talked about the adjacency bonus that you get, so you get extra happiness for adjacent quarters. Not a huge component of this natural wonder. It can be a bit difficult to do because you do need to put both or 2 buildings on there, but it does give you a bit of a goal to sort of play throughout the mid game. But one of the things, or one of the weaknesses that I have seen for this natural wonder is if you don't have production around, it can be difficult because you've got so much food, you've got so many citizens that are coming out. It can be great if you are looking to go for, if you're looking to maximize your specialist, that could definitely be a positive route for you because you've got so much food coming in. But let's talk a little bit about the three categories. So the first one's tempo, and this one obviously does incredibly, not only because there is 4 tiles, which means you've got 4 times 4, 16 gold that's coming through for you in the early game, allowing you to just purchase everything that you need, but also because you've got 32 food, which is just a ridiculous amount of food to have in the early game. You're going to have the largest capital by far. You're not going to have to rely on towns to be giving you food, so that's incredible. When it comes to tech, it's all your culture is looked after. You never have to think about culture already. You know, we're at turn 12 here, and we're at plus 22 culture, easily the highest in the game at this point. So that's another big factor. Your main focus will just be on science, so just beelining towards science. And then the final thing is just your investment. You don't need to invest anything at all to be picking up this natural wonder. It is just everything straight towards this natural wonder. So it is 100% going in the S tier. It is just, look at those yields. How can you not give that S tier? I tell you what, that is going to make Isabella very happy. Okay, now moving on to Gulfoss. Now, I'd never heard of it before either, so don't worry, you're not alone. This is a single tile natural wonder. So I was apprehensive about it initially. When I sat down, I did all the math and looked at it, and I said, there's no way this could be good. I chucked it in the temporary E tier. I said, this is going to be terrible. I can already see it coming. So I jumped into the game with it, and I tell you what, it surprised me. There is a lot of tempo coming out of this. If we look at those 3 core components, tempo, this has got it in absolute spades. 12 food, 4 gold, as all tiles have, but 12 food off a single citizen is incredible because it means you can just start absolutely printing out citizens early on. The second component to this, which is pretty cool, is all of the adjacent tiles around it. If they're a rural tile, gosh, try saying that 10 times fast. If they're a rural tile, they will give you +1 production and +1 culture, which is pretty cool when you think about it, because in the early game, there's not a whole lot going on with regard to your yield. So, you know, you click that button and all of a sudden you're looking a lot better. +1 culture, +1 production. And when you think about it, right, like if you've got your city center immediately next to it, you're not going to be able to take advantage of it straight away. Or you'll only be able to take advantage of 5 tiles compared to if the city center is a little bit further away at 6, but realistically, that's not a huge limitation. So I think if you're looking from a tempo perspective, it is very, very good. When it comes to its tech, I think it's decent, right? Like you're picking up culture, and normally it's going to be about 5 to 6 max culture. You get the 4 gold as well. And then when it comes to your investment, it is a very low investment, a single tile that is all you need to invest. So from that perspective, I think it's actually a pretty good natural wonder, which is kind of wild, right? Because as I said, like when I came in, I was like, there's no way that this can actually be good. It's only a single tile. Now, I will provide this caveat. At the moment, I don't have access to the level 9 memento, but when I do get access to that level 9 memento, this is probably going to come down a couple pegs, and that's just mainly because it's only a single tile natural wonder. So the moment somebody else starts working a natural wonder anywhere else in the world, and it's 2 tiles, you are going to lose all that value that you get off that second memento, which I suspect will become pretty standard for most Isabella players. But look, at this stage, judging by what I see, what I know, and how good the tempo is in the early game for this natural wonder, I've got to give it a B tier. It went all the way from an E up to a B. So what's that, like 3 or 4 levels? It just goes to show, you know, you can't judge a book by its cover. Until you get your hands on the horse, it remains to be seen. Anyway, we'll leave it there and move on to the next one. Okay, next up we've got Uluru, which provides a base of 6 happiness, so that becomes 12 happiness, and then the 2 gold that becomes 4 gold. And it also provides +2 culture to every single desert tile in your settlement. Now, you'd look at that and you'd think, okay, that's pretty good. That sounds pretty good, right? The happiness is going to be incredible because it's going to push us into golden ages constantly or celebrations constantly. The 2 culture is going to be great because it means that we can just focus on our science. We don't ever have to think about it. But it's not actually that simple. Let's go through our 3 different criteria. First and foremost, we want to look at its tempo. How's the tempo? Tempo is absolutely terrible. This is the worst tempo that you can get, 0 for 0. And it's tough, right? You want to throw if you throw a citizen in there, that's a dead citizen. It's good as gone. You're not getting anything for that realistically. Next up, you're looking at tech. Okay, how is the tech? Well, the tech is okay. You're getting 2 culture, but it's not immediate. And there's no guarantee that it's going to be immediate. In these circumstances, we're fortunate because we're across from Uluru, so we're expanding towards it. And the citizens that we've got before it are on desert, so it's not on the edge. So that is definitely one advantage that we've got here. But it means that culture bonus doesn't really go that high. On top of that, one of the things that I noticed, and maybe this is just a trend of how it goes, but you'd think that with a spawn like this, where you've got a navigable river, fishing boats on it, that it would be a spawn that would be suited for growth. But one of the things that I found in this playthrough was that growth was difficult to come by. And that is, in saying that, like, it's important that you acknowledge we've got dates in our capital. We've also got the, I think it's pronounced kaolin, that we've also got in there. So we've got some big, heavy growth resources in there. And yet still, it felt so difficult to grow. And because of that, it comes in at this awkward time. So basically, you want to take advantage of all of your desert tiles, but you also want to take advantage of the resources that you've got around you. And the problem is that it sort of comes online right as you want to start moving into specialists. And that can be a bit awkward. So you would have already seen that Petra makes a lot of sense right here. If we look at these, the fact that it's in the desert, the fact that you're getting all this culture, Petra makes sense. So let's see. Okay, all right, I'll hear you out. Let's see if Petra's actually any good with it. Okay, so here we are at turn 36. We've just dropped down Petra, and you can see it takes us 29 turns. 29 turns, and that's because you're kind of stuck in this awkward spot where you need to invest in food, you need to invest in your desert tiles, but you also need to invest into production. It's not a quick wonder for us to build here. So when it comes to tempo, it's incredibly low. When it comes to tech, it is slow to get online. And when it comes to investment, it is a very high cost. If Petra is what you need for this wonder to come online, then every other wonder is just going to be so far ahead of you by the time you actually pull it off. But I'm not going to leave you guys hanging. Let's have a look at what these yields are actually like. Okay, so here it is, one turn to go until Petra is complete. There she is, the beautiful Petra. And we've got plenty of tiles that we're taking advantage of, but once again, we'll see those tile yields, and it's like, meh. Like, they're good, don't get me wrong. Like, 2 food, 2 hammers, a gold, a happiness, 2 culture, right? And but the trouble that we've got here is that we don't have the citizens. Like, already, if we look at the time in the game, we're at turn 58, and we're only just coming online with it now. And sure, we've got a huge cap. A lot of that is buildings, but at the end of the day, I can't see this as being anything other than an E tier. Maybe if you somehow manage to get it in the cap and you get a good spawn with good yields, maybe. But other than that, it's got to go in E tier. Just too much investment and not enough tempo. Okay, so now we have got the Redwood Forest, which I'm sure you can tell by the sound of my voice, I get a little bit excited when I see this natural wonder. This is, in my opinion, the best natural wonder. I'm spoiling it for you. It's going in the S+ tier. It is that good. It's above everything else. And there's a couple reasons why. So first and foremost, this has insane yields on it. +2 food, +2 production, and +2 happiness. We love all of those things. And we especially love that it's got 3 tiles for us to work, because not only does it give us that extra gold, but it also gives us that extra security. If someone else is out there working 2 wonder tiles, then we've got 3. So it's on the higher side of the tiles. On top of that, because of the food, it means that we can easily put more and more citizens into it. You never have to make a decision when it comes to this natural wonder. You just funnel your citizens in and you're going to be okay. The production allows you to just pump out buildings, pump out units in the early game, and your gold allows you to top yourself up whenever you need to. When it comes to tech, we've got 4 base happiness on the tile itself, which is okay. It's not terrible, but it is... look, I'll put it this way. There is a hidden component to this. And then when we talk about the investment, how much are you actually investing in this? I don't see this as an investment, just simply because these early citizens are going straight into food. They're going to pay themselves off and pay themselves off quite quickly. And I don't really see this as an investment at all. So I'm going to go with it is a perfect score on investment. Now, you will notice that our vegetated tiles have got +1 science and +1 culture on them. And that is because the Redwood Forest provides all vegetated tiles in the settlement with +1 culture and +1 science. And that's insane. That is absolutely insane, because from a tech perspective, now not only are you getting happiness that's pushing you towards a golden age or a celebration, you're also getting culture and science. It's literally giving you every single yield. There's not a single yield that it's missing other than influence, but I don't think there's a single natural wonder. In fact, I know there's not a single natural wonder that gives you influence. So it is giving you every single yield. It is incredible. Now, the only reason why this isn't like S++++ the best tier is because it can be a bit spawn dependent. When it comes to this natural wonder, obviously the tiles, like just the base tiles itself, are incredibly powerful. But if you don't have vegetated tiles around or nearby, it might be a little bit more difficult to say, okay, this is an S+ tier. Maybe this is only an S tier. And in those circumstances, look, I think you might be right. So let's dial it down a bit. We're not going to call it S+ tier. We'll call it S tier for the moment. But the whole thing here is like when you've got a spawn like this, it is just a ridiculous amount of science and culture that you're going to be getting, that you're going to be progressing towards. You don't have to make a decision about which way you go. You just do whatever you want. And I think that's the best thing about this natural wonder is it just allows you to play the way that any way that you want, and just accelerates that and pushes it even further. Games that have got this natural wonder just go so fast. You're like, oh my God, how am I already at this technology? And how have I already got 5 citizens or settlers out there doing their thing? And it's because you've got so much production, so much food, so much gold, so much happiness, so much everything. This is the pinnacle of natural wonders, and nothing is above this. I don't know where we're going to put it. S+ tier, S tier, whatever it is. It's incredible. Okay, so next up we have got the Zhang Jia Jie, which is a pretty decent production natural wonder. Now, I'm adverse to this natural wonder just because it's another one of those ones where you've got to think about it, right? Anytime you've got to think about it and do the math, it can make it a little bit more difficult. There's no food on this. But let's break it down. Let's talk about our 3 components here. So if we look at our tempo, our early game tempo is incredible with this. It has a base of 4 production, which is going to go up to 8 as soon as we've got access to it. And that's going to mean that you can produce any unit, any building that you want, absolutely no problems. The only issue is that you do need to think about it a bit, right? You can't just go straight into both of these tiles. And you might think that you can, you will stall out very quickly. I think getting one early, like we've done here, is the right call. And then you kind of want to focus on growth. And you can't even really use it that early anyways. Like, I think even here, I've gone a little bit too early. And one of the things that I found is, like, I've got 3 scouts. I've got a warrior. It's like, do I make another warrior? Like, what am I going to do? I can't hold all this production. So that's definitely a bit of a first world problem that you get with this natural wonder. But let's talk a little bit about the tech. So you do get the 2 happiness that comes through. Which doubles up to 4. Hello, Uluru. And we've got another natural wonder down here for us. Yeah, the happiness goes from 2 up to 4. But the other interesting component is that you get +2 culture on all of your rough terrain. So essentially what were previously your hills. Now that's different from your vegetated. It's rough, so it's a bit hilly. Now one thing to note is that this natural wonder does spawn typically in like a tropical climate or a tropical environment. So all these tiles that are around me are all tropical. So there's actually some really good synergy here. If we extrapolate a little bit for a game like this, the same way that we would extrapolate with Petra on a desert, we could extrapolate here for the Mundo Perdido, which we're hovering over right now. So the Mundo Perdido provides, I think it's +1, I want to say +1 science and +1 happiness to all of your tiles that are tropical, which is pretty cool. And what it means is that even on the deity AI difficulty, you can basically just rush this wonder. And one of the things that you're going to have in spades in the early game is going to be just all of this production. So I think that it's very cool from that perspective, because it basically is always going to be able to buff up your start. When it comes to your investment, it's not a huge investment. You don't really need to do anything to bring it online. If anything, like, you don't need to go for the Mundo Perdido, but it just enhances what you're doing, right? Like, compare that over to Uluru, where it kind of feels like you have to go for Petra, whereas for this, it's just like, well, I'm already happy with my tiles, I'm happy with my growth, because the other thing is that it almost always spawns on the coast, I think. At least every spawn that I've had, it spawned on the coast. So overall, look, I like this natural wonder a lot. I'm going to throw it in the A tier. I think it's going to make Isabella very happy every time she sees this natural wonder. It's a huge amount of production, a huge amount of tempo in the early game. Not a whole lot of tech, but it's still kind of there. And with the Mundo Perdido flex, it definitely makes sense. Next up, we've got Thera, which is a volcanic natural wonder. There are 4 tiles to it, each one with 4 culture and 2 happiness, which of course doubles with our Isabella bonus. One thing to note is that it's always going to be on the water, and it might sometimes be a little bit off the water as well, so it can take some time to get into it. I've typically found with this natural wonder a little bit of difficulty judging when I should get into it versus when I shouldn't get into it. So here is an example. We're going to take the farm just so that we can connect up. I think opening with a single tile in it makes the most sense. And then from there, utilizing the culture to kind of push you through. But it's definitely a natural wonder that takes a bit of getting used to. You definitely can't go all in with it just simply because, well, let's talk about our 3 factors. So our first one is going to be our tempo. There is absolutely no tempo on this natural wonder. Now, there are 4 tiles, so it means you're getting 4 times the amount of gold as, say, Uluru. So from that perspective, it's definitely a little bit stronger. But one of the difficulties that you will have with this is just because of the lack of tempo, it's harder to invest into these extra tiles. So if you were to compare it to something like Great Barrier Reef, where you just click, 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 you don't have to think about it, it's just in, then that you would have to look at it, down upon it, not very kindly. And there's Mount Kilimanjaro. We got some incredible natural wonder games coming through here. Back to back, we got the double, which is always very cool. Interestingly, I don't know if this is a bug, but it doesn't seem like Isabella is getting that bonus 300 gold the second time. She gets it the first time, but not the second time. So I might have to make a report to the devs about that one. Anyway, so we've spoken about tempo. From a tech side, obviously the tech is incredibly good, right? Like, if we've got a base of 4 culture, that's going up to 8, 2 happiness going up to 4. It means that we just need to focus on science, so we don't even have to think about going into masonry or anything, any region down there. The only thing is, though, with this is that and it just leads back into tempo. It's like you're not going to have access to all of these tiles immediately. It's going to take time. But in saying that, I don't think you need access to all of these tiles immediately, right? 8 culture from the get-go is absolutely huge. And you could reasonably sit on this, just like the single 8 culture for, you know, the next 20, the next 30 turns until you're up to 6, 7, 8 population in the cap. I don't think that would be too much of a hassle. But once again, I mean, we fall back to that whole idea of, all right, well, if we want to get ahead with a natural wonder, then we're not really getting ahead. We're getting ahead on a cultural front, but that's all we're kind of doing with it. And it's because of that, and primarily because it's got the barrier to entry is quite low. The tempo is low, but the tech is high, but even then it's only 1 tech. You'd rather have it a split. Like, you'd rather have 2 science, 2 culture, but you don't have that. And because of that, I don't think it's that strong. And because of that, I'm going to chuck it in the D tier here. So Thera is going to go in the D tier. It's sad to see her go, but it's necessary. Okay, next up we've got Mount Kilimanjaro, which is a 3-tile volcanic natural wonder that's going to be spewing out those lovely yields for you for the duration of the game. Now, when it comes to your main 3 categories that we're looking at here, tempo, it does pretty well. 2 production is great. That's going to go up to 4 production for each one of these tiles. So in total, you're talking about 12 production that's coming in off this natural wonder, which is crazy. There's no food on here, so it means that you're going to have to make or you're going to have to think about it. It's not just about always constantly clicking it. You're going to have to go, okay, do I have enough food to support it just yet? And with the fact that there's 3 tiles, though, this is a pretty decent thing. It means that you're picking up good amounts of gold as well throughout the early game to help you do all your purchasing that you need to. So from a tempo perspective, it is quite good. When it comes to its tech, so you do get those 4 little happy faces that turn into 8, which is amazing because it means that you're going to be looking at celebration after celebration, and that's going to be powering up your social policy. So that's definitely going to be a great aspect for you in the early game. The only downside is there is no culture, there's no science. So it means that you're pretty much on your own when it comes to that. You're basically just going to have to utilize the production to power up your building, to try and build everything that you've got. And then finally, from an investment perspective, you don't really need to invest anything into this tile other than the citizens itself. They don't pay for themselves, so it's a little bit more than, say, something like the Great Barrier Reef, which is obviously just going to, you know, you stick a citizen in and then out pops another one, that sort of thing. So it's a little bit different in that regard, but I still think this is a really strong natural wonder. And like, realistically, if you spawn next to this, you're going to be happy with it throughout the game. And typically, I found that it normally spawns near water or near rivers, so the same way that we see here. So normally, you're going to have some pretty good growth that goes with it, and it can pretty much just be all the production that you need. So even though we're rating them in the cap here, even if you don't get it in the cap, I think it's still great for an expansion that you can turn into a city later. And I think that's another component, something that we probably didn't mention on the previous production natural wonder, is that when it comes to production on natural wonders, it's actually really good because your towns are going to be sending your cities a huge amount of food. And so if there's production, that's going to allow them essentially to just work those tiles. Now, obviously, when it's early on, you're not going to have those towns to support you. But as the game goes on, it's going to mean that you feel confident in the production of that city because of the fact that it's got those extra tiles coming through from something like Kilimanjaro. So I'm really happy with this natural wonder. I'm not going to go and give it an S or an A, but I think it sits very, very happily in the B tier. It's a solid natural wonder. Okay, so next up we've got Torres del Paine, which is a pretty interesting natural wonder because it actually gives a bonus that you can't see. We'll talk a little bit about it later. But you start off and you've got access to 2 food as well as 4 happiness, which is incredible. This is you know, when it comes to this sort of tile yield, it's great because it supports itself. So you can just invest into it very, very quickly. Now, when we look at our 3 categories, tempo, it is a very solid tempo natural wonder, just primarily because the food you can reinvest into it, and the gold you can utilize to purchase all of your buildings very quickly. And as you can see, we're able to get into this very, very early on. It's not as it's not going to be as slow pace as something like Mount Kilimanjaro. You're going to have a lot more tempo with this. The only downside is that it is dependent on the production that you've got around you. So if you've got low production around you, it will mean that you've got all this population that you can't really do much with. And I think that's kind of where its weakness is with regard to the tempo factor. So when it comes to its tech, 4 happiness is great, turns into 8 happiness. Honestly, it just feels like it's too much happiness, right? Like if we take a look here, you can see we're working, this is 3 happiness tiles, 24 happiness we're getting. You're just going to be hitting celebration after celebration after celebration. You will run out of policy slots if you spawn in on this natural wonder. That's how incredible it is from that perspective. But realistically, low investment required for this one. As we spot out the Grand Canyon, we have got ourselves an absolute beauty of a natural wonder game right here. Definitely going to have to send down a settler onto that one immediately. Yeah, I think that's definitely the biggest weakness with this natural wonder, is that from the tempo perspective, that you're not going to have the production. So further to that, when it comes to your tech, you don't have culture, you don't have any science, you don't have anything to really power up either of those 2 things. And because of that, it's hard for me to justify this going higher than, even though like it's tempting to want to give it an A tier. Can you really say something like this is on par with the Great Barrier Reef? I don't think that you can, just simply because the Great Barrier Reef is giving you those science yields as well. And of course, you're not getting as much happiness, but you know, you'd rather take 4 science and 4 happiness any day of the week. And because of that, I think this one can go, we'll chuck it in there with Mount Kilimanjaro. It can go into the B tier as well. Okay, and our final natural wonder for today is Iguazu Falls. Now, this is another single tile natural wonder. This is a rare one that Isabella gets. I think what the devs have done is they've specifically made it so that you're less likely to get these smaller natural wonders when you're playing as Isabella. So other leaders may potentially get these more commonly, but I only found this once in about 100 rolls. And compare that to something like the Redwood Forest, which I found in 21 of the games. So more than 20% of games, you're getting the Redwood Forest, which is incredible. Compare that. And that, by the way, is including games where you don't get any natural wonder at all. So literally in like more than 20% of the games, you're getting the best natural wonder that there is, which I mean can say something about the strength of Isabella. I'm confident. But let's talk a little bit about this natural wonder, the last one for today. So we start off with 4 food as well as 2 happiness. And what's interesting about this natural wonder is that it provides a adjacency bonus to nearby quarters. But what's interesting is that it appears to be bugged. It's not quarters. It's actually just urban districts. So if you just put down a granary, you'll get +2 production from it immediately. You put down a saw pit, I think it's a saw pit. You put down a saw pit, you immediately get +2 production on top of its base yield, which makes it quite powerful in my mind. Because when you think about the barrier to investment, okay, it's literally 1 citizen and that's it. You start kicking immediately. If we look at the tempo, like incredible tempo, 8 food is amazing, and it's from the get-go that you're getting that. On top of that, you're also getting +2 production pretty much from the beginning of the game, because you can always just purchase a granary immediately because you can start with that 300 gold bonus. So that's really, really nice as well. So you're already getting production, and that's going to trickle in. And keep in mind, like in a situation like this, we can actually get every single bit of production. And by the way, we're getting extra production from our city center as well. So we're already at +4 production. And because of that, the early game tempo, it's probably one of the strongest early game tempo natural wonders that there are. Like it would be comparable almost to Redwood Forest. The only difference is when it comes to the tech side of things, it's really not that strong. So compared to like a Redwood Forest where you've got tech throughout the early game, the mid game, into the late game, it's not the case here. You've only really got that growth that is quite strong, that early game tempo, and that's pretty much it. You do have the 4 happiness, which of course is nice. It's better than nothing. Or I mean, technically it's 2 happiness, but it doubles up. Yeah, realistically, I think that this is a pretty strong natural wonder. The only thing that's letting this down is the fact that it's a single tile. And because of that, I would put it in the B tier normally, but I'm going to have to drop it down to the C tier, just simply because it is a single tile. It means that once you start getting up to level 9 and looking at that advanced memento, that this is going to fall off in strength. I mean, at the moment, it looks good, but once we get to that level, she's gone. If you'd like to play with any of the map seeds that you've seen today, they're all linked down below. Just keep in mind that for some reason they don't work with all civilization pairings, so you might need to switch her over to Greece. They seem to work with Greece for some reason. Overall, Isabella is the front runner for the most powerful leader in Civilization 7, at least in Season 1. And a huge component of that is her bias towards wonders. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then feel free to leave a like down below. If you've got any feedback, positive or negative, then please leave a comment. And of course, if you're looking forward to more Civilization 7 content, then please hit that subscribe button, because remember, there's always time for one more turn.